We are back and continuing our discussion with Scott Bates about things happening around the world. Scott, without being indelicate, what are the benefits for Connecticut when the U.S. is involved in these conflicts and wars overseas?
I think we're seeing more and more that there really isn't a division between domestic issues and international. Connecticut relies on international trade more than almost any other state in the country. So you're talking about jobs. You're talking about the gas pump and the home heating oil. That's directly tied to our dependence on foreign oil. And so when you're talking about the Middle East, believe me, that's a portion of why we're so engaged there. So really that division that for the longest time, something that happened in Europe or Asia didn't matter, it sure does matter now, and that's only increasing every day. So the United States as the most powerful country in the world, how are we going to use that power to fashion a world that's going to benefit us? Mm-hmm. And that's the real point. The last time the United States withdrew entirely from the world, World War II erupted. So we kind of can't withdraw from everything. However, on the other hand, we have to be very, very wise and smart in how we apply our power around the world, or it backfires on us in hard ways.
So when we're involved, say, in Libya, and, Senator Blumenthal recently toured the subbase in Groton, he made mention that these subs could be used in that kind of an action overseas. I mean, so it's good business for?
Well, it's necessary, mm-hmm. and our submarine fleet is one of our greatest assets for the U.S. military. Tomahawk missiles were fired off of those submarines at no risk to our troops because they could shoot and go back down. Look, prosperity in the Pacific, which has a lot to do with our ability to export goods back and forth and a lot of jobs in Connecticut, is tied to peace in the Pacific. And it hasn't always been that way, but it has since the United States has had a very strong naval presence in the Pacific Ocean. So Japan, China, Korea, they're getting along. And part of that is that the United States is there to kind of patrol the seas and maintain open seaways. This has everything to do with our prosperity here at home.
And you've mentioned a few times now the price of oil being affected by this unrest in Libya and Syria and the Middle East in general. I mean, what's your projection in terms of how much will be affected by that?
I think some good news, actually, and this is contrarian, right? But there's two things that come to me. One is if there are more representative governments in the Middle East that arise, mm-hmm. more people are going to demand money. So the way it is now in a kingdom in the Middle East is the king's family gets the money, and they are in OPEC, and they control the price of oil by only letting a little bit out. Okay. If something approaching a democracy comes up, let's say in Libya, rather than money just going to Gaddafi, a new government has to take care of a lot of constituencies. They're going to have to sell more oil. And the other thing that's most exciting is that natural gas has been found in the United States and Canada to the extent that within about a decade we could have secure sources of energy, and by that I mean in Canada, the United States, Mexico, and not Middle Eastern oil. And that could be a reality very soon. But we have to get the regulations right. We have to get an alliance between environmentalists and the energy lobby. And that's going to take a lot of leadership from our members of Congress and from the American people, a lot of education about the benefits of that.
Okay. In switching gears, because there is a lot to talk about going on, and in particular to your area, we were hearing so much about the earthquake and, of course, the nuclear accident in Japan, and that has raised a lot of people's concerns about living near a plant, which, of course, we have at Millstone here. I mean, what are you hearing back at home in Stonington about people wondering, hey, should we be doing something here? Or?
I live about 12 miles from Millstone, and I feel totally safe. Look, that is a freak occurrence. They call it a black swan, which is something that is just totally rare, what happened in Japan. The tsunami and earthquake together right at a particular point. Nuclear power is going to have to be part of America's energy solution for a long time. Doesn't mean we don't try to make it as safe as possible, but if we shut down all of the nuclear plants that are serving Connecticut, we'd lose about 20 or 20 to 40% of our power at any one time. And you have to replace that with what? Coal, which is, a pretty dirty type of fuel. So we have to think this through and not react in a knee-jerk kind of way. So no, folks down on the shore, I haven't heard too much about that. I hear a lot about about jobs in the economy, but they're not too worried about Millstone, and that provides a lot of jobs down in southeastern Connecticut.
Are there any political ramifications that might happen in Japan because of what's happening there and they're having to deal with so much at this point?
It's actually brought the United States and Japan together more. So there was tension in our alliance the last couple of years because we have a big base in Okinawa and there have been problems there. The United States military has been front and center providing relief to the people of Japan. My brother lives in Tokyo. Oh. He works for General Electric, a Connecticut company, and he said, he's staying. So I think Americans showing that kind of solidarity with Japan, it's going a long way. And that only helps, again, our relations around the world and our ability to, interact economically as well.
Right. I know that, you and I have had the conversation a lot about the world and local events kind of blurring. Are there other areas of the world that don't perhaps maybe get all the media attention that we should be paying attention to?
President Obama was just in South America, in some of the world's fastest growing economies, Brazil, Chile, Colombia. Those are coming online, and what's happening that should worry us is that free trade agreements are stalled in the U.S. Congress, and China is making free trade agreements all over the world, all over Asia. So if you look at what's happening now, China has free trade, which means a huge jump in trade with India and Japan and the countries of Southeast Asia. We have none of those agreements. So we're getting locked out of Asian markets, and that costs us jobs here at home. I
mean, is that generally, does it get stalled because people think that it's not equal trade, or?
There's that, and I think part of that is a lack of people knowing both sides of the story on this, because now Congress is negotiating hard to get environmental and labor standards put into these agreements. So Korea is another example. We have an agreement with the Koreans that will let us sell a lot more agricultural products, and it's been hung up for years. So, yeah, it's hard because, the reaction is we don't want foreign goods here, but you got to give to get. Right. And America can win. We just have to be in the game to win. Right.
Well, you have a lot of good information. You're a great guest. Thanks, Scott, for being here. And we just want to plug, you have a website that people can follow the projects and information. It's www.scottbates.us.
Yeah, glad to be in touch with folks.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Don't forget, if you missed something here on The Real Story, you can now watch it online by going to ctnow.com. You can also catch us on YouTube. Thanks for watching this week's edition of The Real Story. We'll see you here again next week.